Testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh gosh, that's Good evening. How is everyone doing tonight? Good, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here at the Orange Coast College Planetarium. To be honest with you, I've never been here. So impressive, very, very impressive. My name is JoAnn Dickinson. I'm an award-winning children's book author and creator of the Young Rylee series. I'm especially proud of the Space series, 3 imaginative stories that blend STEM learning and adventure. I also expanded the series with Rylee's Unique Pumpkins in Pumpkinville, and a story about acceptance and differences, and Rylee's Space-tacular activity book for fun activities. I'm going to get this. So these are all, I am missing a couple in here. You saw the books out in front. Last year, I wrote a chapter book, and the reason why I wrote a chapter book is when I went to school visits, a lot of the kids would ask me, when am I going to write a chapter book? I had never written a chapter book before, and I thought, where do I start? How do I write that? These are only 2. There's only 2 grandkids here. John's Camping Adventures, you probably saw that out there. And Amelia asked me several years ago, why do you write all your books about John? You haven't written any about me. And so Amelia, she's our little goofy dancer, but she has a sense of humor. When I first wrote my book, John's Camping Adventures, John was 4 1/2. He's now 13. So those 2 have inspired all of those books that you see, whether they're about Rylee the Young Rocketeer, whether about John's camping, the first time he went camping. Lou Zoo, I would say, Who's New at Lou Zoo is a little bit about me, social and emotional learning. I was very much of an introvert when I was a kid, and so that's about acceptance and fitting in. And so that was one of my books that I wrote fairly quickly. Why STEM learning matters so much. You know, when I wrote Rylee the Young Rocketeer, I didn't really think about what am I going to write about. But one day I saw a float in a Macy's Day Parade. There's the float that gave me the idea to write Rylee the Young Rocketeer. When I saw the float, I said, why is it a boy in the rocket? Why not a girl? So I actually lost my place, so I apologize. I got very, very excited about talking about STEM. Why STEM learning? Early STEM exposure builds curiosity, problem solving, and confidence. Stories make STEM relatable, and children can imagine themselves as an explorer. When kids read about Rylee, they learn facts about each planet and the solar system and dream big. My desire for kids is they can dream. When they read Rylee the Young Rocketeer, they can picture themselves that they could possibly be sorry about that they could be an inventor as well. My hope for every child who loves reading about rockets and rovers today may design or fly one tomorrow. I'm going to get into a little bit about the process of my book writing, because that's one thing I talk a lot about. I do school events, I go to farmers markets, and one thing that I thought when I first started is, I'm just going to write a book, I'm going to have this manuscript, and I'm going to put it on Amazon KDP, because we upload the paperback onto Amazon. But I decided to hire a children's book coach. And so when I hired, independently I hired a coach, I wanted to know the process of it. I'm a real estate broker by trade, so I want to organize. I'm a big organizer, and so I wanted to do it as efficient as I could. Rylee's series was created after that float and the parade, and I sat down and I said, how could I write a story about a little girl that wants to go to the moon or wants to learn about planets? So you have this idea, I had this idea that I wanted to write Rylee the Young Rocketeer. This is awfully high up here, I didn't realize. What sparks the story, so I have my story idea, that sparked it, and then once I wrote the story, sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't. But all of us authors, we find editors and illustrators on Facebook. Facebook and social media is huge for finding how to do something, how to, in groups, a lot of how-to. And so I found my editor, Robin Katz, which is a brilliant editor. Not only does she edit, but she also meters the story. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of that term before. Metering is the rhyme of the story. Da 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 da, da 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 da. So that's metering. And then also she helps me with what's called the couplets. And couplets are the two lines that in a story. So you'll have da 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 rhyme, da 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 rhyme. So the rhyming word. And so you have metering, you have couplets. It's very complicated. And usually it's anywhere between 7 and 11 beats for the metering and the rhyming. And so it can be very complicated, but I write the rough drafts and I leave the metering and the processing to her. Once I send my manuscript to the editor and she gives me a clean copy, then I have to find an illustrator. And I thought, where am I going to find an illustrator? Well, once again, there are authors, illustrators, and editors. There's anybody that you want to hire in the author world, you will find them on a Facebook group. And so I was able to find an excellent illustrator for Rylee the Young Rocketeer. Let me get a little further into the, oh, I'm going backwards. So I met Daria Shamalina on a Facebook group. I had this story, it was edited. I didn't know what the character was going to look like. I didn't know anything about it. As an author, when we're looking for an illustrator, we look at their styles. They put their designs, they put their drawings up on Facebook and Instagram in these groups. And so we just scroll to see if we can find somebody that we like their style. And I love Daria's style. I gave her my manuscript. I hardly gave her any information. She lives in Poland. We only communicate through an email. And so I gave her my manuscript, and the first picture she gave me was, so the first picture she would give me a sketch. First, as an illustrator, they'll give you a sketch, and then after that, she will color it. And that's what you get as an author. Now, you only have one or two options for changes. You only have one or two changes. And so as an author and an illustrator working together, she'll quote you by page, she'll quote you by spread. A spread is 2 pages, which is a book folded open, or per page. And so that's the quote. Usually you get that quote before you start. An average book is about 42 pages. You don't want to be any longer than 42 pages because Amazon KDP doesn't want any more than 42 pages. Besides that, and 42 pages is the copyright page, it's the title page, it's the story, it's the author page and the author illustration page. So a full 42-page book is about average, but you don't want to get it much longer than that. And then after hiring the illustrators, so you have all these pictures, that she's given you a full file. Now, typically, most of us don't hire a book designer. An author will just have the illustrator do the formatting and laying out a book. I hire a book designer because they are the expert in that field. The illustrator will create a cover, she'll create all the illustrations, but somebody's got to put those pages together and in order. Then not only that, you have the words. Now these are not the font and the script that's in my book out there, because when I created these slides, I only had the copies that didn't have any words on the pages, because my book designer, she did all of that, and I kept these and downloaded them without that script. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but once the book designer gets done and puts everything all together and puts the words on the page, then everything becomes a file, and it looks just like you see the books out there. It is the copyright page, it's the title page, it's the pages of all the illustrations. She puts all the pages together. You have to have a PDF complete file to upload into Amazon KDP. Does everybody know what Amazon KDP is? Okay. Kindle Direct Publishing. Amazon publishes our paperback books. So when you as an author, you've written the book, you have a full file, and it is the KDP file to upload into the backside of your author page. It's got to be a full, ready to print. Now, through KDP, you can see page by page by page if everything looks like it's lined up. If it's not lined up, you've got to go back to your book designer, and that's why I use a book designer, because if there's anything slightly off on KDP, you don't want to move on to the next versions, which is ebook. You have an ebook version, and you have an offset printing version. And the offset printing version is different than the KDP version or the ebook. So it sounds like it's a lot of simple steps, but it's not. There's a lot of details. Let me go back in here. So after hiring a book designer, then you're ready to publish. You're uploading that into Amazon KDP, and you hit the button publish. You have the ebook version, and as an author, you can automatically, that paperback version gets turned into the ebook automatically by Amazon. But then you have all the keywords on the back side, you've got your title, you've got your subtitle, you have your description. There's a whole lot of detail that has to be done before that. You don't want to move on to an offset printer, which the hardcover is not printed by Amazon. It's printed by an offset printer, and I use an overseas printer that obviously you get a better price on overseas, and you're ordering a bulk a bulk order of 300 to 500. Some people order 2,000 copies. And that's what I take to a farmer's market or a school visit that I go to. And so that's kind of a quick run through of how we actually write the book and all the people that are involved in it. Inspiring Young Explorers. Rylee the Young Rocketeer is about Rylee's dream of building a rocket and visiting 8 planets. I included Pluto. I know it is a dwarf planet, but I wanted to include Pluto, so I have 9 planets in my Rylee the Young Rocketeer. It teaches planets in order. That was very important. STEM learning is very, very important to me because I go into the schools and I do school events, and I want the teachers to take the book back to their classroom. And I also have created worksheets and extensions to all my books. So I call them my teaching tools, and I think that's really important to teach kids STEM learning and social and emotional learning. And encouraging children to follow their dreams. Rylee the Young Rocketeer, I love the message, mainly because when I was a kid, I didn't come from a family that encouraged me to reach for the stars and that I could do anything that I could possibly think of doing. And I think that's why I like writing so much and why I'm so passionate about it, because I really can connect to every single one of those books that I've written. And always a little piece of me is in them. Rylee's Rover Goes to Mars. Now, when you write the first book, it's so easy to write a series. And you can see I have 4 different series out there, whether it's camping, whether it's space, whether it's bee and ocean conservation. So once you write the first book, the other ones come natural. And that's why I wrote Rylee's Rover Goes to Mars and Rylee's Rover Goes to the Moon, because not only did she build a spaceship, and I don't know if you saw the illustrations, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but because I'm going to read the book to you. I keep going backwards instead of forwards.
My water.
It's so important to me to expand the series as much as I can because I want the kids to learn everything they can learn. In the Rylee's Rover Goes to Mars, there's a few words in there like Phoebos, and I know I have a few people in here that are going to correct me because I'm not even pronouncing it correctly. I see you guys back there in the back. I've got a few technical terms in all my books, and nobody's given me, I guess I need to look that up on the internet, don't I, to get the proper way of pronouncing it. But there's some technical terms in there, and I asked my editor, is that too much for a 2 or 3-year-old? And she said, no, introduce those words to them. In my Amelia Ophelia book, the Narwhali Protectors of the Sea, there's some pretty technical terms in there of whales and different sea mammals that I thought was pretty above some of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders, but it wasn't. To my surprise, it wasn't. Getting back to my books, Rylee's Rover Goes to the Moon. Rylee and her pal Cosmo. So Rylee has a pal, Cosmo, which is in all of her books. Explore the moon science, highlights teamwork and imagination. Once you write that first book, it's so natural to go to the 2nd and the 3rd book. And I just feel that every time I wrote a book, I had something pulling at me that you need to write this next book and you need to write that next book. And so it's just something that we do. I think we call it you get a bug to write books. I'm going to stand back here because I'm going to have a hard time reading this. Oh my goodness. Let me see what angle I can get this at. Okay, so I'm going to share my book with you. I don't know if any of you have seen it out there yet. Young Rylee is reaching again for the stars. She has thought of a way to explore planet Mars. As you can see, those rhyming, it ends in a rhyme, and those sentences are couplets. Oh, there I went backwards again. And there's the drawing of that next one. One thing that I loved about being an author is to see that sketch and then it turns into color. She'll design a new rover with blueprints and schemes and then travel through space as she follows her dream. Now there's another sketch. She tells Cosmo, let's travel to Mars very soon. Help me build a new rover to fly past the moon. We will build him so sturdy, my Randall the rover, recording with photos, he'll travel all over. We'll go on a journey, let's give it a shot. We could have fun on Mars while we're learning a lot. Let's begin by collecting the most needed parts, so we're building a rover that prints perfect charts. Now, I don't know about you, this is pretty advanced for most kids thinking schemes and rocket science. As a skilled rocketeer with the best of all rockets, I'll gladly take care of the engines and sprockets. Spectrometers made to test light we should take. Those are brilliant inventions we don't have to make. Next, we'll need a few covers to shield the computer, then join complex parts to resemble a scooter. We'll get lights and wires for instrument panels to carry fast signals and switch between channels. Our rover will need sturdy wheels to go travel on hills of deep sand and a lot of rough gravel. 4 cameras will cover both sides, front and back, and the mast will be human-like, painted jet black. When we start up the rocket with Randall behind, we'll approach planet Mars to see what we can find. Now, obviously, this is very imaginary with the chain, but I've had kids at school say, how is that ever going to be possible? We will learn by collecting rare rocks and hard soil in lots of containers with lids made of foil. Let's go near Jezero. Am I pronouncing that right? View craters and dunes and see Phobos and Deimos, irregular moons. Now that's the way I've always pronounced it, but I saw some people laughing at me in the back. We may see 5-eyed monsters with many an arm, building big Martian rock farms with no fear of harm. Returning to Earth, we'll enjoy the sky's glow and keep dreaming while we feel our planet's great flow. From the Earth, we'll see Mars with our own naked eye as that planet shines bright in the dreamy big sky. There is much to discover, let's bring every friend, and I hope that our fun with exploring won't end. Now, originally when this book was created, the B book was going to be a Rylee book, and that's when I got that question from my granddaughter that said, where's my books? Where's my series at? Here's the ocean, here's the bees. I have a story that's been written about Rylee being an archaeologist. Never published it yet, still have it. And the plants, I think that was another story that I was going to write about where our food comes from. And that didn't get done either. So, I don't know, maybe one day. These stories are more than books. They're gateways to curiosity, tips for parents, teachers, and homeschoolers, encourage creativity and learning. Ask your children which planet they would like to explore. Encourage rocket and rover drawings and small STEM projects. I also have a Facebook group page that is STEM learning. It's everything about STEM. And I have a really good friend of mine. She is a rocket scientist, or she's a scientist, and she uploads and shares a lot of information. Visit your local planetarium or look up and stargaze. Every time a child asks, "What if?" they begin to think like a scientist. Rylee's adventure reminds us that curiosity takes us everywhere, across planets or into new ideas right here on Earth. I want every child to feel they can dream big, explore, and create, and never be held back. Sky's the limit. I was talking to a gentleman here tonight, very impressed that his young son is taking college courses. And that's a parent that is giving his son every opportunity to learn and never hold him back. I want to thank Orange Coast College Planetarium for hosting me, and to all of you joining me tonight. I wouldn't be here tonight if I wasn't at a book fair here at Orange Coast College, and that's where I met Jessica. And she saw my books and invited me here. That was, I think, last year, and I can't thank you enough, Jessica, for having me here. And remember, reach for the stars and always follow your dreams. Now, I also want to share with you, in June, I started a podcast. And I never thought that I would be able to be so chatty, but all my author friends, we get together. I started asking my author friends if they would like to sit down with a cup of coffee and let's talk everything about the author business. So if there's anybody out there that's thinking about writing or has a family member that wants to write a story, we talk about everything from their passion, how they got started. Marketing is huge. Once you have your book, you've got to start marketing it. You've spent all this money. It's an investment, truly an investment. The editor is pretty inexpensive, but it is the illustrations and the large book print for the hardcover copy are your two most expensive. And so we talk about all sorts of things. I interviewed a gal that did a Kickstarter campaign. And does anybody know about Kickstarters? Okay, so we have Kickstarter campaigns when we're launching a new book, and that puts out, you basically pre-sell your book, and that's a way to market it when it's a brand new story. So take a look at Beyond the Book with JoAnn Dickinson. We talk about everything from the publishing and beyond. And it's interesting. I've learned a lot from my guests on my podcast. I never thought that I would learn as much as I did from them. And I thought after publishing 15 books, I thought I knew quite a bit, but everybody's story is different. We all have different stories of how we got into what we're doing. And I always have said, I have a creative side. I just never really expanded into it of what I could do. I've been a real estate broker for 25 years and started writing during the pandemic, and that's how I got started in the author business. I want to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions for me, feel free to, yes.
They have the original Magic Tree House trees, and then they veer off that, and then they go to the real editions. How do they do that and make it more fantasy-like? And then can it branch off into miniseries where they don't follow a specific order, and you can start one without doing the other one?
That is a great question. I asked my editor that this week because I have Secrets of Hawthorne Manor is a young mystery chapter book, and I'm going to try and explain without going too far off of that. I wanted to take that chapter book and I wanted to turn it into this crazy idea where they go into fantasy land. And she said, keep those two books separate. Keep those two stories separate. So there's cozy mysteries. There's a young mystery haunted house. But when you go into fantasy, that's a whole different genre. And so you want to keep those genres, and some of them are very specific. I interviewed a guy on my podcast that's coming out on Monday, and he writes cozy mysteries. I never knew there was such a thing as cozy mysteries. But I wouldn't write cozy mysteries with my haunted house. So those are two different genres. So you have to be careful if you're going to have 3 books in a series and then you decide to write about something different. Is it the same genre? Or is it something completely different? Then you want to separate those stories into 2 different series. Great question. Did I answer your question?
The Mystery House, they have the same genre, but it's like it's like this and then they put it this.
So how do you write that? You want to know how they wrote those stories. You have to have a huge imagination. And how they wrote, because I don't know that book and I don't know that story, I don't know if I can answer your question specifically how that author did that. But my guess, if I was writing a story like that, we tend as authors, I call it, we go down rabbit holes. And we can write and write and write and write and write. And then you go back and you look at that story and you say, okay, now how do I put all that together? You've got a first chapter, you got a second chapter, you got a third chapter. And if he's going to go off into another whole different story, then maybe he wants to only put part of that story in one book, and then he's going to continue that book in another whole different book, but it's all in that series. Did I answer that question? Okay, good. Anyone else have any questions for me? Yes, back in the back.
What's your favorite book you've written so far?
I get that asked all the time at schools. Students ask me, what's my favorite book? Who's New at Lou's Zoo won Best Cover 2022. 3 days ago, I got an email that Lou's Zoo in Winston 2 won Best Cover 2025 in BIBA, Best Independent Book Awards. The reason why I say that series is my favorite because I love the illustrations. The illustrations are hand-painted, they're watercolors. She lives in South Africa. She does yoga on the grass with a giraffe coming over right down in. She lives amongst those animals. She's so very talented, and I love those books. As you can tell, they're works of art. They're pieces of art. Now, Secrets of Hawthorne Manor, it's the first time I ever wrote a chapter book. I didn't even know how to write a chapter book. But as you guys know, in the world today, you can learn anything on YouTube. You can learn anything through AI. And yes, I use AI. I love AI because it doesn't write my books for me. It helps me stay organized. I'm a little ADD sometimes. And I go down rabbit holes and I think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. It helps organize my life and it helps organize my chapters. It gives me an outline. When I first wrote that book, I didn't know what to write about. I knew I wanted to write about a chapter book, but I asked my 12-year-old grandson at the time, what should I write about? And he said, write about a haunted house. And so I never thought about writing about a haunted house. I didn't even know anything about ghosts and where I was going to go with that story. But I turned to AI and I said, okay, I want to write about a haunted house. I knew I wanted 5 characters. Jack Hawthorne was the main character. He meets these 4 friends that they're all best friends at the school. He's the new kid in town, and this house has been in his family for 200 years, and he wants to find out what it's all about. Well, in the meantime, I don't want to give away the story, but in the meantime, he meets his ghostly grandfather. That was his journey when he was alive, learning about the Civil War and all of his family members in the Civil War, has a lot of history about his family. And so to answer, hopefully, another question, is that has very quickly I picked up very quickly about how to expound sentences. Writing this, to me, is like a piece of cake. I hate to say that, but it is very simple writing, even though you've got to learn the rhyme, you've got to learn the meter, you've got to learn the couplets. There's a lot of writing technique, but writing a chapter book or a novel is a whole nother world. And so I'm in the middle of the second book in that series. It'll be a 3-book series. But I love it. I really enjoy it. Anybody else that has any questions for me? Yes?
How long on average does it take you, or would it take someone to write a children's book?
To write.
From your idea originating?
From beginning to end.
Yes.
So Rylee the Young Rocketeer was very quick because that illustrator is very quick. So I sat down and wrote almost all my stories very quickly. Within an hour, once I had a story idea, it was very, you outline it, very simple. I use Rhyme, I think it's Rhyme Zone. I haven't looked at it lately. Rhyme Zone is you put a word in and it gives you 50 words that rhyme with that one word. And so that's the trick of rhyming books.
Is this an app?
It's on, just Google it, Rhyme Zone. Google it, that's an old term, isn't it?
Illustrators work and other owners to complete the project. How long?
3 to 6 months. So 3 months is an illustrator like Daria that draws those sketches in 2 days, gives me, and we work very quickly together. She gives me her sketch, I approve it, she has it colored in 2 to 3 days. So we move along in those pages very quickly. Lauren Sparks, that did the Lou Zoo, that took about 9 months because every picture has to be painted by hand, watercolors. So they are like painting a picture. And interesting, her sheets are 3 by 3 pages. She takes those paintings and she scans them and reduces them to get smaller pixels. So that's the sharpness of the picture. But to answer your question, 3, 6, 9 months, depending on the illustrator. And during the pandemic, I published 4 books a year, which is very quick. You can do that if you have 3 or 4 illustrators. You write one, it goes to the editor, then that after the editor, it goes to the illustrator. You're writing one, goes to the editor, go to the illustrator, and you can really move them along with more. I know many of my friends, their book series are 1 illustrator, but I couldn't do anything fast enough, so.
So you would recommend illustrator for each book?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want a full book series, so when I first started writing those series out there, I didn't know I was going to have a series. I just had all these ideas written, and before I knew it, I had 4 different books written. And so then I said, let me turn these into a series. And so it was very easy for Rylee the Young Rocketeer. She now has a rover, and she's going to go to the moon and the Mars, and so those were very quick. And then John's Camping, we went to Yellowstone National Park, and I said, oh my gosh, I got to write a book about this. And so that's where that one came from. And I don't know if I will in the future or not, but I wanted to write books, at least 3 to 4. 3 is my magic number for a series. I don't know why. maybe it's my lucky number. But I was going to write more than one book in that series, and I just haven't had time to. Yes, back there.
So you kind of mentioned like you were a real estate broker, and you talked about like your authorship. Where does your love of STEM come into this? Like, how did that develop, and how did you decide on that being the topic of what you wanted to discuss?
You know, I had a podcast about that, and I never knew that I was writing about STEM when I had that story. You saw the float that I saw, and that I put up there, and I saw it, and I said, I'm going to write about a little girl, not a little boy, that wants to go to the moon and Mars. Never in my wildest dreams did I think, I don't even know if I knew what STEM at the time was. Not consciously writing and creating, but it just happened. And once I started with the first and second book and started meeting teachers, and their students were going crazy over my Rylee the Young Rocketeer, did I realize, oh, there's something here. I need to write some more books and STEM learning. And then Ophelia and Narwhali being bee and ocean conservation, that was a fifth grade teacher, or is a fifth grade teacher. She's also the illustrator of Secrets of Hawthorne Manor. I went to her and said, I have this beekeeping idea, and my granddaughter wanted her own series, and what am I going to write about? I knew I wanted STEM, and so ocean conservation and bee conservation are two great trending at the time. They were trending, and they are STEM learning. So great question, though. Yeah, I don't know if I even the Lou Zoo, who's new at Lou Zoo, I don't even really know if that was consciously, oh, I need to write a book about social and emotional learning. But everybody writes about kindness and acceptance and fitting in. And that book was supposed to be an ABC book that turned into, when I started naming those characters, I don't know if you looked at those books or picked them up, like Gage the Glorious Gorilla and Gina the Gentle Giraffe. Apparently, I don't know if we have anybody here that knows about speech and speech therapy. Apparently, that is very good. The names that are in that book is great for speech therapy. Maybe the little bit of a tongue tie of the name of the characters. And then that, once I name those characters, it's like, this is too great of a book. I don't want to just do an ABC book or something simple. And so I really started expanding on fitting in. And all those characters are beautiful, but I don't know if you saw at the end, it's a mandrel, and he's kind of not so beautiful, and he's worried about fitting in. And Lou wants everybody to love everybody and like everybody. You have to be kind to everybody. And so that's what that story's about. Okay. Yes?
How long have you been writing books?
My first story I wrote in 2016, John's Camping Adventures. That first book was I Love to Go Camping. I knew nothing about writing, knew nothing about self-publishing, and I hired a publishing company. They took my money, told me they were going to help me with marketing, and it was a very not so great experience, unfortunately. I had my own illustrator, which was a friend of mine that I sold the house to. He's an art director in LA, and so he did the illustrations. You can find that on my books on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. I Love to Go Camping. The illustrations are beautiful because he did a great job with painting, but I did that book in landscape, and at the time, Amazon KDP did not print, and that's what the unfortunate of that publisher did not tell me. Amazon would not print that book. And so they printed it, had it printed in hardcover, but Amazon wouldn't print it in landscape. So it was 11 by 8.5. And so I decided I needed to rewrite that book. John's Camping Adventures is the 8.5 by 8.5. That is a standard book size for Amazon KDP is 8.5 by 8.5. So that's why you see so many out there, or 8.5 by 11. Yes.
I was just gonna say that's really awesome that you're including all these like big technical words and of course the like difficult speech words in your kids just to help build that early on in their brain.
Absolutely, yes. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the Narwhal book. I took it to school, and on the way to the school, I got on an app that told me how to pronounce a couple of those words in there. And I even asked my editor, are you sure we should put this in that book? My books are from average 2 years to about 7, maybe 8 for a slower reader, or there's a lot of older kids that love picture books. And the pictures tell the story. Not so many, they have few words, but they tell the story. And so I don't know if I finished answering his question. My first book was in 2016. Self-published, I started in 2020. And now I have 15 books. And my first book, 2022, is when I originally first published. So 2022 to 2025, I have 15 books. And that's including, I have 2 activity books. I have John's Camptacular activity book and Rylee's Spacetacular activity book. And there's more than just coloring pages in there, so a lot of activities. Jessica, how are we doing on time?
It's up to you. Yes, we're good.
Few more questions? Anybody have any more questions? Yes.
What's your podcast name?
Beyond the Book with JoAnn Dickinson. So if you just search my name, JoAnn Dickinson, you'll find me on the first page. You'll probably find a lot of, I started in June, and I didn't think that it was going to get as big as what it did, and YouTube is a huge learning curve for somebody my age. And so AI has been my friend in my YouTube posts, but I started out with a couple of podcasts a week. I think in some of them, because I have so many people contacting me and saying they want to be on my podcast now, authors and illustrators and different people that want to be on my podcast. I am now just finished scheduling. I booked out until December, and then I'll start all over again. But I don't know if I'm going to do 2 or 3 a week. You guys probably know. It's about 8 hours to tape, to edit, to post, and I'm on Spotify as well, so it's on YouTube and Spotify. It's a lot of work, a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. That's taken me away from writing, so I got to get back to some writing. Anybody else have any questions? I know some of this is beyond the little ones, but hopefully they enjoyed it as well. Yes.
I have a question. How do you tell the illustrator how you work on the pictures? Do you tell her I work like that?
You know what? That's a great question. Daria Shamalina, I have given her now 4 manuscripts, and I don't tell her anything. I just give those to her, and she illustrates them beautifully. Lauren Sparks on the Lose Zoo series, we actually have a one-on-one meeting. I told her my design, what I wanted. Usually we already know what the illustrator's design is because we find them on Facebook, and they always have. That's where illustrators find us. They post their artwork on the social media in those groups, and we go scrolling when we have a story. Let me see if I can find somebody that is what I'm looking for. Now, what I always do as an author, I want a couple of samples. I will hire an illustrator to draw me one picture, and then after I get that one picture, and that's $100 to $200 for a sample. of what they're going to do once they see my manuscript. Sometimes I don't hire them because that's not what I saw originally in their illustrations and then what they're drawing for me. And sometimes you just have to cut your losses. What I say is I just need to move on and find somebody else to find that perfect. So we, like you and I are talking, we get on a Zoom call, what we call a Zoom call, if you know what that is, and we start talking. She has my manuscript, I have a copy of it, and I will take a manuscript and break it down into those pages. And it'll be the first group, first spread, second spread, third spread. We'll talk about each one of those. All the illustrator has is words on a page. And then she gets my ideas of what I think, and then she'll give me feedback on this is what I think we should do. And then she'll give me a sample before we start, because I don't want to pay her. Illustrations are anywhere between $2,500 and $6,000 for a book. And so we don't want to get started and then find out, oh my gosh, so it's not the right person or the right fit. But usually you know, once you, like Lauren and Daria and I have done a lot of work together, so I just give her the manuscript and let her go at it, and everything is perfect. I also have a t-shirt company. On my Instagram, there's a link tree that has all my links on it. And so my characters, Rylee the Young Rocketeer, Lou Zoot, usually I wear one. I told my husband that's kind of corny. I don't think I'm going to wear my shirts. I wear my shirts out a lot, everywhere, because I'm marketing myself. There's not a place that I don't go. The grocery store, Target, wherever it is. Sometimes it's the doctor's office, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I love your character. Where did you get that? Well, actually, that's marketing. Here's my card. My books are on Amazon, so that's all part of marketing. Marketing is huge, just like tonight. And this is a marketing for me, so yes.
How you walk into this journey that your career to be a book writer?
Uh-huh.
Do you have dreams when you were a little girl, or?
When I was a little girl, I drew a lot. A few years ago, I started painting. During the pandemic, I started painting. I've always been very artistic, but my grandson really sparked that first passion in me, that he came over and he calls me Lolo. Lolo, I caught my first fish. I went hiking and we saw a wild animal. And it's like, that's an idea. But once you start writing, it's like you get that bug. And so, I don't know what it is. I saw somebody's hand over here. Yes. A chapter book was a little trickier. So, my first book, it took about 9 months. And you don't have as many pictures in a chapter book, although I put about 5 illustrations in there. And it took almost a year to publish that book. That was a whole lot longer than some of these. Yeah. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time and coming, and hopefully you learned a little bit tonight about my author world.
Excuse me?
Uh-huh.
I thought they moved the treehouse right next to I thought they did they put the tree in the tree house in the tree?
The tree house in the tree. Was that one of the books you saw?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? I have some very talented illustrators that drew that picture for me. Okay, thanks again, everyone. I appreciate it.